So I've seen video game ratings boards do some dumb crap, but this right here just might take the cake. Many of you may know about a game called Balatro. It was recently nominated for Game of the Year, and I think aptly so. It is by far one of the most addictive games I've ever played. It is essentially a roguelite that utilizes poker hands in order for you to score points, but you're not actually playing against players. This right here is the launch trailer, and this shows you an idea of what this game is all about. You build poker hands that are worth a certain amount of points, and then you try to score at least a certain amount of points every round, and what you have to score increases as you go through a run, and throughout the run you will accrue what are known as jokers. These jokers essentially give you upgrades and enhancements as far as your ability to earn points is concerned, or chips in this case, and they also find ways to increase your multipliers and have various effects that allow you to combo in a way that allow you to exponentially increase your ability to output points as the score requirements increase. And so you can see, an example of that here where the jokers are synergizing in a crazy way as you play hands and stuff like that. And you got different cards that can modify the deck itself, and that can enhance the cards themselves, or that can enhance the worth of the hands themselves. So it is just an incredibly addictive game that plays nothing like poker. That is the emphasis of this video, as PEGI, the ratings board that is in charge of defining, what age you have to meet in order to access a game, is just losing its mind by labeling Balatro as an 18-plus game. I wish I was joking, but you can see right here, if you go to PEGI and look up Balatro, it is considered to be a game that should only be played by adults, despite the fact that, again, it plays absolutely nothing like poker. The way I describe Balatro is that it's more like solitaire with roguelite progression with poker hands involved. But you're not actually playing a game of poker where there are other players involved, where it's about playing the players as much as playing the cards, betting chips and all these things. None of that is in play with Balatro. It is absolutely not poker. It just has the aesthetic of poker and the hands of poker, but the gameplay loop itself is completely devoid of any sort of poker elements. In a real game of poker, you don't get to draw this many cards. In a real game of poker, you don't get to utilize jokers that enhance how many chips you earn. In a real game of poker, you don't get to, upgrade individual cards. You don't get to add modifiers to things. You don't get to do any of this stuff. You know what I mean? This is just a completely different game from poker. And yet, despite that, PEGI deems Balatro to be a safety hazard for kids because this could be the gateway to poker, essentially. So right here, there is an explanation for why Balatro was labeled 18 plus. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I'd go as far as to say egregious. Egregious like how easy it is for nefarious actors to access your personal information online. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, DeleteMe, a subscription service dedicated to keeping your personal information private and safe. Data brokers are constantly out there trying to profit off of selling your personal data to nefarious actors. So it is more important than ever to be proactive about your digital footprint, and that's where DeleteMe comes in. With this service, in one fell swoop, you can delete your personal information from search results and hundreds of data broker websites. Everything from your name, age, past and present addresses, photos, email, phone numbers, relatives, social media, occupation, marital status, property value, you name it. Information that could be used in shady ways. I didn't realize just how public my data was until I saw my first report from DeleteMe detailing just how many data broker websites had my personal information. And with the volume of personal information that's available online for cheap having tripled between 2019 2019 and 2023, there is no better time than now to get a subscription service like DeleteMe to do a big sweep on all of your personal information. I also have the security of knowing that DeleteMe is constantly active, monitoring sites and removing data as needed, and providing privacy reports every 3 months to keep me in the know about all that stuff. You can even make your own custom requests to have your information removed from specific sources by DeleteMe's experts. So if digital privacy is a top priority for you, you can protect your data with DeleteMe by using my link, joindeleteme.com/Yong20 and my code Yong20 to get 20% off at checkout, with family plans available as well. You can also find all of this in the description and comment section below. All right, so let's check out what PEGI has to say about Balatro. It describes it as a 2D deck building card game inspired by poker with roguelike mechanics. In each round, the player needs to play poker hands to score chips and win in-game money. This game teaches, by way of images, information, and gameplay, skills and knowledge that are used in poker. Except it's not enough to just know poker hands in a game of poker. It is a lot about, as I said before, playing the players, and this teaches you none of that. It continues. During gameplay, the player is rewarded with chips for playing certain hands. The player is able to access a list of poker hand names. As the player hovers over these poker hands, the game explains what types of cards the player would need in order to play certain hands. As the game goes on, the player becomes increasingly familiar with which hands would earn more points. Because these are hands that exist in the real world, this knowledge and skill could be transferred to a real-life game of poker. Okay, so it teaches you poker hands, but so what? I need to highlight that the game of poker isn't inherently gambling. It only becomes gambling if real-life money is involved in the betting of money. PEGI treats poker like it's inherently gambling when that's not the case. You can turn a game of poker into something that involves real money, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. At the end of the day, it is a game that involves winning points. It's just that in the real world, a lot of times poker is used as a way to convert those points into money. But as long as that's not actually happening, poker inherently is not gambling. Because when you think about it, any game whatsoever, any board game, any card game, any tabletop game can be turned into something where you can gamble money if you decide to implement monetary systems that allow for the betting of money based on the outcome of, who wins a certain game that has some luck and chance involved, which is a lot of board games and card games. But even if the goal was to just ensure that kids didn't learn the mechanics of poker, the fact that Balatro so little resembles poker makes this final statement here ridiculous, because these are hands that exist in the real world. This knowledge and skill could be transferable to a real-life game of poker is the dumbest excuse I've seen to give a game that is so unlike poker the 18+ rating. That's like saying any board game involving dice should not be accessible by kids because rolling dice is similar to how you play craps. That's like saying kids should not be able to access lollipops because when the stick sticks out of their mouth, it can resemble smoking cigarettes, and so those skills are transferable to smoking cigarettes. It's like saying kids should not be drinking from soda cans because those skills are transferable to drinking beer from a can. Sure, you do the same motion, sure, it's pretty much the same can, but what you're actually drinking are two different things, right? Sure, Balatro has poker hands, but what you're actually playing is not poker. It's like saying kids should not be allowed to access water guns and Nerf guns because those skills are transferable to using real guns. No, they're not. The only area where Balatro simulates gambling is that there is some luck involved to earn an in-game currency that, yes, it's dollars that you can spend on those jokers and those upgrades and all of those roguelite progression elements, but the dollars there are essentially just points like the ones you'd find in any video game. It's like saying that Baldur's Gate 3 has gambling because you roll dice to define how much damage you do and in turn earn currency from the damage that you do, because if you kill enemies, you can loot them. And really the most important thing to highlight is that Balatro doesn't allow you to actually use any sort of real world currency. You can't actually spend real money on Balatro and get into this pattern of recurrent spending, unlike something like, say, EA Sports games like FC25, their soccer game, which is labeled as a game that should be accessible for kids. It's PEGI 3, meaning that it's suitable for all ages. But this is a game that, by PEGI's own admission, contains in-game purchases and includes random items. You can actually use real-world money for the random chance of getting items that make you better, that give you an advantage. That's actually gambling. You know what I mean? Like, that is true gambling, especially because real currency is involved. And so the hypocrisy of labeling games like these, sports games, where you can pay for loot boxes that are essentially pay to win, where you gamble for the chance to win, as being suitable for all ages, being suitable for kids. And then this game that not only does it play nothing like poker, but also doesn't allow you to spend real money whatsoever, and is ultimately just like any other roguelite game, just with some, again, poker aesthetics. This game of all games, with not an ounce or shred of gambling in its gameplay loop, being labeled 18 plus is genuinely one of the dumbest things I've seen PEGI do. And I've seen them do dumb shit like label Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow as PEGI 12 because this game contains gambling, because there's imagery of slot machines and you can engage with those slot machines. Somehow Pokemon Red is deemed to be more dangerous to kids than EA Sports FC 25, when there are plenty of stories out there of kids who had no idea what they were doing. They were just buying loot boxes off of their parents' credit cards and debit cards, not knowing that they were spending real currency, because they got addicted to the opening of packs that provided random rewards that could give them an advantage. And they ended up spending tons of money through that method that actually financially damaged the family as a whole. The hypocrisy of this was not lost on the maker of Balatro. It was just one person who made the game. So right here we have Local Thunk, as he goes by on Twitter. He posted the following in response to how ridiculous this decision from PEGI is. Since PEGI gave us an 18 plus rating for having evil playing cards, maybe I should add microtransactions and loot boxes and real gambling to lower that rating to 3 plus, like EA Sports FC. This is comedy, he said. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, so what? It gets labeled 18 plus. What's the big deal? It's just a label. Well, do keep in mind that that's going to limit the sales of Balatro. When somebody goes to a game shop to buy this game, they're going to see that 18 plus label and believe that there is actual gambling involved, that this is basically just poker, and not give this game a chance because they're going to think, oh, maybe this will get me addicted to gambling. This will get me addicted to poker. It'll get me to spend a bunch of money. And certainly my kids can't play this. And same thing might happen if somebody goes to the online shop looking for a fun game to play. They look at Balatro, they see the 18 plus label, and they'll make all kinds of assumptions. All kinds of wrong assumptions based on the perception shift that this 18 plus label causes and this gambling label causes, when there's not only no gambling involved whatsoever in Balatro, it is in large part a skill-based game. There is a way to consistently win at Balatro, especially as you unlock more jokers, as you become more familiar with the game's mechanics and the right combination of upgrades and jokers, and you name it, you learn how to play the game and how to get better. Victories in this game are far less luck-based and far less random than a real-life game of poker, because of all of those enhancements that you can optimize in your favor. And you're not trying to beat other players and take other players' money. You're just playing against a computer that says, hey, meet this criteria of points, and just keep doing that until you no longer can, and then try again. Kind of like an arcade game. Not only is this laughable, it is a genuine danger to label games with actual gambling as being kids friendly. This right here is the crime. This right here is what should be punishable, but instead, games like Balatro, that being punished and having its sales limited in Europe by this label that is so completely false. All this does is turn PEGI into a laughing stock, and if they're going to be so unreliable about the way they label games and don't provide the proper warnings in games that are actually hazardous and potentially dangerous, then PEGI is just a pointless organization that is utterly failing at its job. Or at the very least, that's one man's take on this whole PEGI and Balatro situation. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Balatro being labeled an 18+ game by PEGI. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.